Evander Holyfield was not supposed to be facing Bert Cooper on November 23, 1991. The scheduled opponent, Francesco Damiani, withdrew, and Cooper stepped in on short notice to challenge for the undisputed heavyweight championship at the Omni Coliseum in Atlanta. Late replacements are rarely treated as real threats. They are treated as the fighter available on short enough notice to keep a date on the calendar. And Cooper entered the fight carrying exactly that reputation. Live power, unreliable conditioning, and a resume that made him a name rather than a genuine contender. Holyfield came into the fight as the undisputed heavyweight champion, holding all three major belts, in an era where the sport was already looking past this specific title defense toward a potential showdown with Mike Tyson.
There will be a Tyson shot that hits him, and they separate.
A voluntary defense against a late-notice opponent like Cooper was supposed to be a bridge fight, activity to keep Holyfield sharp rather than a serious test of his championship. The framing is exactly what made the third round so jarring for anyone watching. Bridge fights are not supposed to produce the first knockdown of an undisputed champion's career.
Tucks those elbows in, blocks the body shot. Double jabs.
Cooper had his own complicated path into the sport's biggest spotlight. A puncher whose talent was never seriously disputed, but whose career had been defined as much by inconsistency outside the ring as by anything he did inside it. That inconsistency is part of what made him such a live risk on short notice. A well-conditioned, disciplined, replacement fighter with average power is a manageable problem for a champion. A fighter with genuine one-punch power and an unpredictable relationship with training discipline is a different kind of problem entirely, because his floor and his ceiling on any given night are further apart than almost anyone else Holyfield could have been matched against. That reputation nearly cost Holyfield his undefeated record as champion. In the third round, Cooper landed an overhand right that put Holyfield on the canvas, the first knockdown of his professional career. It is worth sitting with what that meant in the moment. A champion who had never been down before, dropped not by an elite contender in his prime, but by a short-notice opponent who had taken the fight on a matter of weeks. Whatever gap existed between Cooper's overall skill level and Holyfield's, the punch itself did not care about resumes. It landed clean, and Holyfield hit the canvas the same way any heavyweight does when caught the same way.
A stabbing hook to the body by Briggs.
The Atlanta crowd's reaction in the immediate aftermath of the knockdown told its own story about how completely the fight's expectations had inverted in a single punch. A building that had gathered to watch a comfortable title defense went briefly silent, then loud in a way that had nothing to do with cheering for the champion, as thousands of fans absorbed the sight of an undefeated title holder on the canvas for the first time in his career. That shift in the room's energy is not a minor atmospheric detail. A champion fighting to rebuild composure after a knockdown can feel that shift as clearly as he feels the effects of the punch itself, and managing both at once is its own test, separate from the physical recovery. Referee Mills Lane administered the count, and Holyfield rose.
Well, what's the injury?
It was trespassing.
Sir, let me a couple of things.
What followed in the minutes after the knockdown mattered as much as the punch itself. A champion who has just been dropped for the first time in his career has to make an immediate decision about how to fight the rest of that round, whether to retreat and rebuild or stay in range and prove the knockdown was an aberration rather than the start of a collapse. Holyfield chose to stay engaged, absorbing the risk that came with it, and survived the round without further disaster. An overhand right is a specific kind of danger precisely because of the angle it travels on. Most fighters train their eyes and reflexes to track punches coming in roughly straight lines or tight hooks along a predictable plane.
Accusing me of stealing.
I'll tell you how you do that. You take the bike, you put it in the house.
Right, but I was riding the bike. A friend of mine that got...
A looping overhand right arrives from outside that plane, over the top of a raised guard rather than through it, which is why it has ended careers for fighters who are otherwise sound defensively. Holyfield was not caught because his defense had a structural flaw. He was caught because that specific punch, thrown by a man with real power behind it, is difficult for any heavyweight to see coming, regardless of how disciplined the rest of his guard is. There is a version of the 4th and 5th rounds that gets skipped over too quickly in most retellings of this fight. The stretch where Holyfield had to actively rebuild his own tactical footing rather than simply survive on instinct.
11 onwards there, he never threw a punch. It's covered up. The ref did the right thing to stop the fight.
Getting dropped disrupts more than balance. It disrupts a fighter's sense of range and timing for at least a few minutes afterward. And a lesser champion might have spent those middle rounds still fighting cautiously, overcorrecting against a punch that had already landed and gone. Holyfield's return to full aggression by the 5th round, pressing forward rather than continuing to play it safe, is as much a part of the story as the knockdown itself, even though it produced no single dramatic highlight the way round 3 had. Cooper's own situation worked against him as the fight progressed.
Men trading hooks. Another upstairs.
He had taken the assignment on short notice, which meant a training camp compressed into weeks rather than the months a title challenge usually commands. And that compression showed up exactly where it always does in heavyweight boxing, in the ability to sustain output once the opening adrenaline burned off. He had landed the punch of the fight in round 3. He did not have the physical foundation to build on it across a full championship distance against a champion who was, whatever the knockdown suggested, still the better conditioned athlete in the ring. Holyfield used that gap deliberately. Rather than trying to force a quick knockout to erase the embarrassment of the knockdown, he settled into a longer fight, working behind his jab and picking his spots as Cooper's pace began to slip. By the middle rounds, the fight had inverted entirely from where it stood after round 3. Holyfield was landing with increasing frequency. Cooper was working harder to produce less, and the power that had put the champion down in the 3rd round was no longer arriving with the same conviction behind it. The finish came in the 7th round, when Holyfield's sustained pressure forced a stoppage and secured the technical knockout. It was not a dramatic single-punch ending in the way the 3rd round had briefly threatened to produce for Cooper. It was the accumulation of 5 rounds in which the challenger's conditioning simply could not keep pace with a champion who had absorbed the worst moment of the fight and methodically taken over from there.
Stunned and staggered moments ago. Now he's right back in the fight looking pretty good.
Yeah, some guy over one of his strengths is...
There is an easy version of this fight's legacy that treats Cooper as little more than a footnote, the short-notice opponent who briefly inconvenienced the champion before fading as expected. That framing short-changes what he actually accomplished. Very few heavyweight challengers, on full training camps against a healthy champion, ever put Holyfield on the canvas at all across his entire career. Cooper did it on weeks of preparation, against a man in his athletic prime holding all 3 major belts, and the fact that he could not sustain the pace needed to finish the job does not erase what that 3rd round proved about his power on the night it mattered most. What this fight actually proved about Holyfield had almost nothing to do with the knockdown itself, and everything to do with what happened afterward. Plenty of champions have been dropped by an opponent they were expected to beat comfortably. Fewer have responded by neither panicking nor rushing the finish, instead rebuilding the fight on their own terms across the rounds that followed. Cooper gave Holyfield the first real look at what it felt like to be hurt as heavyweight champion, on short notice and without warning, and the fact that his record still read undefeated by the time referee Mills Lane called it in round 7, said more about Holyfield's composure under pressure than any of his cleaner, more comfortable title defenses ever had the chance to. That distinction matters more than it might seem for how Holyfield's own legacy eventually took shape. Champions who never get tested rarely have their resilience proven in a way that outside observers can actually point to. Every subsequent question about whether Holyfield could handle real adversity mid-fight had a direct, concrete answer available in this specific result. Dropped in a title fight for the first time in his career, and still standing as champion by the 7th round regardless. That answer traveled with him into every bigger fight that followed. A piece of evidence available to anyone doubting his chin or his composure long before the sport's biggest punchers ever got the chance to test either one directly. The Omni Coliseum crowd that night saw something genuinely rare in heavyweight boxing. A fight that looked completely decided twice in opposite directions before it actually ended. Cooper's 3rd round knockdown made him look like the biggest live underdog story the division had produced in years. Holyfield's 7th round stoppage made that story disappear almost as quickly as it had arrived. Few fights swing that hard in both directions and still end with the expected champion's hand raised, which is exactly what makes this one worth remembering well beyond a simple line in Holyfield's record of successful title defenses, long after the specific circumstances that brought Cooper into that ring on short notice, on weeks rather than months of preparation, have faded from most fans' memory entirely, leaving only the 2 moments that actually decided the story: the knockdown and the 7 full rounds it took the champion to answer it.